Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Both been here too long. You can't go back to Ireland or Poland or England, and I can't go back to Africa. And we will live here together, or we'll die here together. And it's not I am telling you. Time is telling you. You will listen or you will perish.
You ever felt?
Are you listening?
Hey everybody, welcome back. So today I want to talk about how the concept of cancel culture is not new, and the only reason why we're seeing a pushback from the white conservatives is that this is the first time their behaviors have become a consistent target of a system that had been working for them and not against them. Lately, white conservatives have been complaining about the prevalence and restrictions of cancel culture. These conservatives never seemed to have a problem with something that they had been doing for hundreds of years. Probably because they were too busy railing against the evils of political correctness. It wasn't until Black Twitter decided to utilize the concept of cancel culture as a form of boycotting and pushed it to the forefront. But now that we are calling people out for their legitimately toxic behaviors towards minorities, marginalized groups, and the liberal agenda, all of a sudden people are coming out of the woodwork and crying about the ills of being canceled? Why now? Could it be because the system of cancellation that has always worked for them is now being used against them? So what's the correlation between cancel culture and white supremacy? Well, these two have been best buds for hundreds of years. Let's explore. As we all know, white supremacy is founded on a baseless and discredited claim that white people are inherently superior. One of the biggest problems with this is we are living under a system that was built on these concepts. It is literally ingrained in everything we do. From our banking, shopping, media consumption, on down to how we educate our children and ourselves. Now, in order to maintain the structure that you see in this diagram, you will have to delete or discredit anything that threatens it. Hence the original form of cancel culture. Now let's look at it from a 2021 perspective. These are the things that we consider unacceptable. Lynchings, hate crimes, overt police brutality, neo-Nazis, the KKK, the N-word, swastikas. Now let's move to what is frowned upon, but still ultimately accepted by our society. Confederate flags, mass incarceration, racial profiling, stop and frisk, fearing people of color, the school to prison pipeline. Takes Judge Ciavarella, for example. He sentenced 3,000 children to juvie, and in return, he received a finder's fee from a for-profit prison that incarcerated juvenile delinquents, as seen in the documentary Kids for Cash. Moving on to the veiled racism. Most people don't call it out because they don't get how abusive it actually is. Racist jokes, the bootstrap theory, Eurocentric curriculum, cultural appropriation, claiming reverse racism, the concept of colorblindness. How about we move on to minimization? This is used to gaslight people who call out racism and bigotry. A denial of white privilege. The white savior complex. Saying get over slavery. False equivocation. Lastly, indifference, which is rarely if ever called out. Most people who practice indifference are tolerated because others say that's just the way Bob is. Politics don't affect me. Two sides to every story. I'm not challenging that racist joke. I'm not going to talk to my aunt about what she said. It doesn't bother me. All of these things are not just examples, but actual ways in which the white supremacist form of cancel culture has shaped this country and the American psyche. Here is an example of one particularly vile politician who hates it, but at the same time calls for the cancellation of anything that challenges their bigotry and racism. Conservative Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has constantly complained about being the victim of cancel culture, all the while enjoying the benefits of speaking her mind unimpeded, not canceled, and in the same breath ask for the things that oppose her to be canceled. But it's not just the conservative politicians who balk at cancel culture. It's also those in the media and Hollywood who benefit and subversively subscribe to the white power structure. Take Piers Morgan and Sharon Stone, for example. For those of you who don't know, Piers left the talk show Good Morning Britain because of the backlash he received about his comments in regards to Harry and Meghan. But this is only one instance of Piers' racist, bigoted, and biased behavior in front of and behind the camera. This is just the first time he's had to take full responsibility for what comes out of his mouth. Now, Sharon, she came to Piers' defense due to their friendship, and she called out cancel culture. Not because she's particularly opposed to it, because she was uncomfortable with it applying to her friend's abhorrent behavior. On the flip side, as much as they rail against it, both Sharon and Piers have made a reputation by actively trying to cancel those around them. For all the crying that the conservatives and those who benefit from the white power structure do, they still will not admit that they have taken advantage of how this country built itself by literally canceling anything in its way. Let's take a look at the ways that this country has canceled its most vulnerable population. Reservations and the destruction of indigenous people. This was the first instance of the white supremacist cancel culture. Roughly 18 million indigenous people lived here prior to Columbus' arrival. By 1900, the number fell to just 237,000. They were pushed to reservations and almost completely wiped out of the American narrative. The Salem witch trials. Most of those accused of witchcraft were outspoken women, Quakers, slaves, colonists with criminal backgrounds, people who had previously been accused, and those who criticized the witch trials. So by getting rid of them in one way or another, the status quo would be maintained. Slavery is cancel culture. Slaves were routinely kept away from those who spoke their language, and they eventually forgot how to speak it, not allowed to practice their religions, stripped of their names, identities, ability to marry, and were literally physically canceled when they were deemed a threat, and so much more. The fact that whole black settlements were demolished and thousands of black people annihilated, Seneca Village in 1855, Colfax, Louisiana in 1873, Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898, Rosewood, Florida in 1923, just to name a few. Japanese internment camps.
We still couldn't believe that they could force American citizens out of their home with no reason.
In the meantime, we are set setting a standard for the rest of the world in the treatment of people who may have loyalties to an enemy nation. We are protecting ourselves without violating the principles of Christian decency.
J. Edgar Hoover utilized it by targeting and going out of his way to try, and at times effectively cancel the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers, black elected officials, black newspapers, and even the singer Paul Robeson. Robeson spoke out against racism. He spoke about his appreciation for the Soviet Union and how they treated him well when he was there. So this was more than Hoover could stand, so he set out to cancel him. And yo, ain't he fine? Anyway, cultural appropriation is cancel culture. It literally cancels the uniqueness and beauty of what a culture has built and turns it into nothing but a trendy commodity. The concept of the angry black woman is a way to delegitimize and cancel black women like Whoopi Goldberg and Cheryl Underwood. When black women push back against bigotry with force and oftentimes with conviction in their voice, they are consistently labeled angry black women. And this dismisses not only their whole argument, but also their intelligence. Here's the thing. Conservatives aren't actually angry about cancel culture because if they were, they wouldn't try to use it to their advantage, Ted Cruz. What they're really angry about is the fact that the liberal left and the marginalized groups are once again able to take something that has been used against them and make it something beneficial rather than something that hurts those who can't stand up for themselves. Things are changing, and that's what scares the shit out of them. As the pyramid says, in a pyramid, every brick depends on the ones below it for support. If the bricks at the bottom are removed, the whole structure comes tumbling down. And this is what we are doing. We are slowly and systematically removing the bricks from this pyramid. I thank you for stopping by again, for listening to me. And once again, I really would love to hear what you have to say. So until next time,